Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Gram Power Stribog A3. Slovakia's finest PCC / SMG, depending on what configuration you're going to get it in. If you went the machine gun route, I guess you could call it an SMG, and that wouldn't hurt the internet's feelings. But in semi-automatic, we tend to refer to them as PCCs. And this is the latest iteration finally in the United States. It's been around for some time, but it was able finally, the ATF State Department granted permission for import, and now you're able to get them. I purchased this this A3 in pistol configuration and immediately converted it to an SBR because if I can not use pistol braces, I'm not going to use pistol braces. I went with the OEM folding stock from Gram Power, got that from Global Ordnance. What am I getting? Well, I'm getting an 8-inch PCC that is a roller lock, if you will, operating system versus direct blowback or even delayed blowback or radial delayed blowback. Some of the other operating systems you see with PCCs, the most common being direct blowback. This has roller lock, which everybody was talking about how it was going to be the greatest thing ever. Of course, I wanted to check that out for myself, and I'd had enough people asking me about Stribog. I was going to pick up an A1/A2, but I heard the A3 was coming, so I figured I'd go ahead and wait for that because that was supposed to be far and away the best version of the firearm ever. So I wanted to check that one out because it was going to be the most recent one. I generally try not to do reviews on things that have been around or on the market for 4 or 5 years just because I'm like, I want to check things out as they're new, see how they're going to go. So my 2,000 round review process is what I was going to put the Stribog through. Just getting into general features, controls are very friendly, the grip's very friendly, which is good because you're kind of married to it. You can't change out the grip system if you don't like it. As right now, no one's making different lower receivers for this thing, so you're kind of stuck with it. It defaults to an ambi safety system, which again, I'm not usually a fan of ambi safeties, but these are very recessed. There's just enough purchase there for you to sweep it with the thumb, or if you're working the outside, obviously if left-handed versus right-handed, you're going to be good to go. I've got ambi magazine release and I've got an ambi bolt release. And I've got a non-reciprocating charging handle, which I'm like, go ahead and pat yourself on the back for that, because a lot of people traditionally, when it comes to PCCs, when we went with this particular operating system, we'd be like, it's fine, it can reciprocate. On this shorter length of rail system, you definitely don't want a charging handle that reciprocates when you shoot it. So I'm glad that they went with a non-reciprocating charging handle system. There is some things I don't like about the overall charging handle, but we'll get to that. I've got integral built-up peep sights, which are pretty cool, and because it's not married to a buffer tube system like we see on the AR platform, the stock generally can be a little bit more ergonomic and place your head in a slightly different position for your neck versus cheek index, depending on how you're shooting, so I don't have to necessarily use a riser system, and using a riser system would preclude the use, unless I used a specific type of riser like a Scalar Works, would prevent the use of my backup iron sights if I needed them. So I just went with an aim point for the review process on a traditional height mount right there on the top rail. Because it's an 8-inch gun, I don't get a lot of rail, but I do get a lot of rail for an 8-inch gun, if that makes sense. So accessory mounting wasn't that big of a deal. I just went with a thumb activation on the outside with a mod light. If I wanted to run a laser or something, I'd probably have to bring my riser up for my optic, or I could find some way, maybe a CQBL or something I could run on the inside underneath the charging handle. But then, of course, having to use the charging handle, accessories would quickly get in the way. These things kind of default to single point slings. You can run a 2-point on this. You can, it's got an M-LOK rail interface, so you could run a front QD and then run a back HK hook or off the stock or whatever. But generally with something like this, I don't really mind the single point sling as much, even though generally I like 2 points of contact on the rifle to control it and minimize that pendulum swing that they get when you go hands off. Getting right into the review process, first thing I'm going to do once I get the firearm zeroed is a 500 round burn down, which is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if the accelerated rate of fire will show me issues with the firearm that shooting the same 500 rounds over a longer period of time may not show me. So here's your 500 round burn down. I did have one stovepipe, I guess, during those 500 rounds. Could just be breaking in, the air quote breaking in process hiccup. Wasn't really sure at the time. But overall, 500 rounds except for that one round, so 499 out of 500 went out without a problem. Even as the firearm got hot, I didn't notice anything get strange as far as control interfaces, the bolt release, the magazine release, trigger press, anything like that. Everything worked as it was supposed to work, which is something that obviously we want to see happen. And then after that, I just started using the Stribog for just normal range practice, anything I wanted to work on to get it up to that 2,000 rounds throughout the review process. Now, ammunition fired. I did put quite a few different ammunitions through this during the 2,000 round review process. Mostly 150 grain Blazer, but also shot 150 grain Federal, 124 grain Gold Dot, and some 115 grain Wolf, because shooting steel case through a gun is always a good idea. One thing that appealed to me about this as a PCC, and any PCC that does it, is it's a stagger-fed chamber, stagger-fed magazine, which I prefer for my PCC category. There's nothing wrong with PCCs that feed off of pistol mags, but it's in the sentence, pistol mags. I don't like, this is just my personal philosophy, I don't like firearms that reappropriate magazines for different purposes. So I've got some Glock-fed PCC, Glock magazine-fed PCCs, and they run fine. I just feel like they're a little bit more, they can be a little bit more finicky anyway, than a purpose-built PCC with a purpose-built magazine. One of the issues that they talk about with previous generations of Stribogs was the magazine. The magazines that are available for the A3 have reinforced feed lips. I have both types of magazines used during the 2,000 round review process, and I didn't see an issue with the previous generations of magazines, but I can see the potential for one. So the newest magazine, they listened to the customer base, said, hey, we need to reinforce these feed lips. They definitely did. They provide you with 3 of those when you purchase one of these, if you are going to purchase one, and they should eventually be pretty available. I also purchased 2 50-round drum magazines for this thing, just for the overall review, be able to put more rounds through it. Right around 750 rounds, the problems started. Not a big deal, but I did notice I had another stovepipe, and then I had the bolt the bolt mass wasn't going all the way forward and chambering around on a fresh magazine. So I'd empty a mag, the bolt would lock back, I'd hit the magazine release, I'd stuff a new mag, I'd hit the bolt release, and it would stutter on the way forward, and then it wouldn't go all the way in a battery. That's not something that should happen at 750 rounds. Now, before any review I do on a firearm, I break the firearm down, I oil it properly, I put it back together. Because if a firearm can perform well with no oil, the tolerances are probably so loose that it's not going to be a good gun as far as accuracy and consistency purposes. So it's not like I was running this thing without oil, I was running it just like you should run it. So at 750 rounds, I broke the gun down and I oiled it, put it back together, and then it went fine for another couple hundred rounds, and it started doing it again. And I also had the charging handle shuttle, which I eventually found out is made of plastic, which is not a big deal, but I think there might be a problem with it because of the frequency of fire. So that shuttle, made of probably a high-temp polymer, I would imagine, but it sits right above the barrel. And if you shoot fast and you get the barrel hot and that heat rises, it's going to start to potentially affect that shuttle, which is made out of some kind of polymer plastic. I'm not sure the exact material, but it ain't metal. Once I got to 1,000 rounds, I literally had to completely clean the gun to get it to work again. And this was before I'd even really shot it suppressed very much. Once I put the suppressor on it, oh boy, the problems got worse. Damn it! Damn it! Finally. Damn it! Really? First magazine of the day. Damn it! Damn it! Only suppressor I used on it was the Soundsco Omega 9K. I don't think changing and using a different suppressor would have changed the overall behavior, just because of the way this works. It's not like I'm working with a DI or short stroke piston or something like that. I'm working with a roller lock 9mm. Once I put the suppressor on it, it seemed to require cleaning more frequently. So in between 1,000 and 1,400 rounds, I had to break it down 2 more times to do a complete cleaning. And that's when I noticed, full removal, taking that shuttle out of there, I noticed that the actual charging handle shuttle, I'm going to call it a shuttle, I'm sure they have a different term for it, the actual piece itself, was dragging at certain places inside the firearm receiver. And I took it apart and I'd clean it and I'd oil it and I'd put that back in there, and the resistance, if you will, would go away. And then I'd put a couple magazines through it and it would start to stiffen and start to come back, to where the point, even when the gun is clean, sometimes the shuttle will stick on me at this point. Now, I don't know if that's because the heat warped it, or if there's something in there I physically cannot see with my eye using a light or something like that to get an idea what's going on in there, causing that additional friction that I did not notice when I first started shooting the firearm. Is that a big deal? Absolutely, because I caused so many issues to where the bolt would lock all the way back, the shuttle would go forward with a little bit of effort, but the bolt would stay locked to the rear or halfway to the rear, and I could not get it to go forward. So I'd have to take the firearm apart, put it back together, more oil, more cleaning. I've cleaned this thing more times than I should have had to have cleaned it in 2,000 rounds. So that's kind of a big negative for me. I don't want to have to constantly clean and service a firearm. The whole purpose of a firearm is to, well, not the whole purpose, but one of the redeeming qualities of a firearm is I only have to clean it when my groups open up, as long as I maintain lubrication and just general maintenance. I should be able to go, if I wanted to, 2,000 rounds on a firearm without having to do a full breakdown cleaning. And realistically, on a pistol caliber firearm, I should be able to go way more than that with regular oil and just general surface maintenance. I shouldn't have to do full breakdown cleanings. Maybe that's just my personal philosophy, but I've shot a lot of PCCs, and this is the first one that I had to break down and clean frequently in order to just get it to run. The caveat though, and I will say this could just be a problem with this one firearm. This may be a sample size of 1. So for the remainder of the video, we're not even going to talk about, well, for most of the remainder of the video, we're not going to talk about that anymore. Let's talk about how it performed when it was running. Obvious place to look is accuracy. Is the Stribog accurate? I zeroed it at 25 yards because I feel like it's a pretty reasonable distance for PCC purposes. Shot a 5-round group on 124 grain gold dot. So here is your zero distance, 25 yards, 124 grain gold dot. That's very respectable accuracy. But I wanted to stretch the legs on it. Something I've started doing in my PCC videos is also do a 50-yard group. So no holdover, just 5-round group, showing you how accurate it could be if you wanted to zero it at 50 yards. Here is the same ammunition, 124 grain gold dot, fired out to 50 yards using the 25-yard zero. My overall feelings on the Stribog A3, I really hope this is a sample size of 1 issue, because there are things that I do like about it. I do like the trigger. I do like the fact that it's a non-reciprocating charging handle, and I do like the fact that it is roller lock. However, the difference in recoil from a traditional PCC that's direct blowback, depending on the gun, coming over to roller lock, I don't notice a significant difference, but some shooters would. And that's just basic on experience and how much you shoot and what you're okay with. One of the most venerable systems ever to carry the roller lock is the MP5, and the recoil on that thing isn't like the flattest ever, but you will notice a significant difference in the roller lock system versus the direct blowback system, especially on the shorter barrel guns with less purchase and maybe not as ergonomic controls. But just speaking for the A3 on its own merits, recoil is completely manageable. You're able to get the muzzle back down, you're able to get your reticle back from on your red dot when you're shooting fast, to be able to maintain consistent hits, reasonable sized targets at reasonable distances. So the recoil pulse is nice. I think that's probably the best feature about the firearm. Everything else besides the trigger and the safety selector will be good or not good depending on how long it's gone between cleanings. So me personally, I'm not keeping this thing. I'll be getting rid of it just because I don't feel like I should have to clean a firearm that often. However, it does have redeeming qualities. And like I said, it could be a sample size of one. I'm going to talk to some other people who shoot a lot that have these and see if they've had similar issues. And if that's the case, then there you go. That's your disclaimer. If they haven't had issues, then maybe I just got unlucky with the one that I happened to purchase. And that's entirely possible, because no matter how good your quality control is, sometimes small things slip through, and it could be one small issue with something inside the firearm that I'm not seeing when I take it apart that's causing the issue. But yeah, I'm just, ugh. Anyway, I'm Eric Calvin with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.